Hey folks, so I should be live. Can you hear me? Is this working? Can you hear me better than last time? Am I too loud? Am I not loud enough? So this is partly an audio test because I realised that the built-in mic on my new webcam is crap. So I'm using an external mic that hopefully is working. So we're a small band of brothers and sisters here, so there's about 30 of us online, so it's really small. So if you've got any questions that you want to ask me, then fire away, and maybe we'll come up with something interesting. Obviously this was again with almost no warning, or 20 minutes warning instead of 5 minutes, but it's a different time of day. Obviously the Americans are all still asleep, I think pretty much, or maybe just about waking up at this time. So yeah, volume seems good, great. I had to turn it up to 800% to get this to work, with some background buzz. I'm afraid the background buzz is actual real background noise. It's probably, I've got a window open and it's, I don't know, like the heating or various other things. So, good, okay, so background buzzing, but it sounds better. Sorry, I've got a rug in my throat now. Yeah, so I've got background noise. I know when I've used this mic in the past, I've had the same feedback from people, saying that there's background fuzziness. So I'm not sure what to do about that. It probably just is the sound of the environment that I'm in. I think for the absolute best audio, I'll probably use the headset that I've got, because that seems to be the most surefire way to do things. But, as you guys can imagine, having a headset on with an attached with a cord and stuff, if you want to move swords around or do anything like that, it's really inconvenient because the cable gets in the way. But anyway, yeah, give us a shout out, let me know where you are. Wow, we've got 60 people online now, which is fantastic. Let me know where you are, let me know what you think about the sound. Is it better than last time? Is it worse than last time? I hope it's not worse. Hopefully you can at least hear me more easily now. And I don't know what to do about the background buzzing. Maybe there's a filter I can download or something. Kanraku says, have you seen any sources mentioning open carry of swords or pistols in urban, relatively parts of early 1800s America? Not really, it's not really something I've researched, I'm afraid. I am aware of the fact that, contrary to the popular perception from Wild West films, westerns, that a lot of American towns and cities didn't allow people to carry weapons around. And this is one of the great, you know, maybe one day I'll do a video about this, but this is one of the great urban myths of kind of 1800s America, is that everyone was armed to the teeth, when in reality, even out west, it seems that a lot of towns didn't allow the carrying of weapons. And this is covered in a couple of Western films. I think it's I think in Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood and Gene Hackman, I think it's kind of mentioned in that, where it's basically like, if you're coming into town, you need to give us your guns. But then of course it's the old kind of Second Amendment kind of argument, well, what if the person in charge is actually the baddie? So yeah, I won't get into politics. Wow, that was quick, wasn't it? I've only been filming for 3.5 minutes and I got into politics. But yeah, there we go. It's a great, fascinating subject. So yeah, various people are saying that there's a buzzing sound. Not sure what to do about that. It sounds like a heater or electrostatic. So there is some plumbing noise at the moment because the heating's heating up. And there's a window open. So what I am going to do, and it's quite windy outside, I'm just going to close the window. I don't know if that will make any difference at all. It will make me a lot hotter, I'll tell you. But for some reason our heating's on really high today, and I'm absolutely boiling in my room, so I've got the window open despite the fact it's middle of winter. Well, not middle of winter, but you know, late winter. Your audio test is a bit odd. Okay. Finland, Ontario, Canada, United States. Oh, there's a question here. It'd be nice if you could approach late Japanese armour in a future video. Well, I might do, but you know, my friend Raffaello Metatron knows more about Japanese armour than I do. He has got some good Japanese armour videos, so if you haven't checked those out, do. I, at this stage, know a little enough about Japanese armour that I wouldn't feel comfortable doing videos about that. But hi from Texas. Hello. So Texas is one of those places that I regularly consider emigrating to. And yes, I know that I've been talking about this for years, but there are many things holding me in the UK, but there are many things making me want to leave the UK. Yep, so other people saying that the sound is clear aside from the buzz. It's really useful. I know this might be boring for some people to listen to and watch, but the fact is that this is the main purpose of this test actually. Apart from the fact that I do actually, as I've said before, I do genuinely enjoy doing these live streams. It's not like I get anything out of it really financially or anything like that. There's the odd super chat, but generally speaking, this is something that I just enjoy doing because it feels a bit more like direct engagement with you guys. So I do enjoy doing it. But so a lot of people referring to the buzzing sound. So I'm pretty sure that's because I've turned up the magnitude or magnification, I don't know, of the sound up to 800%, which I had to do to get it audible. It was for some reason through the OBS software with this microphone, it comes out really, really quiet. So we've got people tuning in from the Netherlands, from Buenos Aires, North London, not so far away, loads of other places. So see if we see any Germany. Hi from Germany. So sounds are not bad, but the buzz are ignoring. So there's the buzzing sound. Hi from Belgium, from Japan, more from Netherlands. There is a disaster in Texas. That doesn't sound good. I don't know anything about that. I'm sorry if there is something bad going on in Texas at the moment. Someone says don't emigrate to Texas, come to northern New England. Well, one of my main reasons for going to Texas would be the laws, which are pretty much the opposite of the UK's laws. We've currently got 148 people viewing, so thank you, 149 now. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's really, really nice to know that you're out there and you care. More people from Germany, Spain, Canada. My ARMS website is very slow. I know, and do you know what's funny is I'm literally processing stock today to start putting up on the website. So if you're interested in antique swords, go and check out Easton Antique Arms. There will be new stock up this week on the website. That's a promise. Okay. So here's an interesting question. What good sabre treatises are there for people who are midway between being a beginner and intermediate skill? I would say if you haven't looked at John Musgrave Waite's treatise, go and look at that. It's always good to go back over treatises that you maybe looked at some while ago but haven't looked at for a while, because what I find is as you get more competent, you're able to understand more of the nuance and subtleties in some of the treatises. So go back and check those out. There's some really good Italian material actually. If you go and have a look at Chris Holtzman's translations, it's under the book Italian Dueling Sabre, but it's actually military sabre. But if you go and look at some of the Italian sources that have been translated, or if you can read Italian, then great, very good material there. Equally, if you can read French, there's some very good French sources. But I would also check out who's a good. It might be worth your while to go and look at some of the drills in Angelo. So Henry Angelo's Infantry Sword Exercise, 1845. Go and check out some of the exercises, some of the practices as they're called in there. They're pretty good. There's some pretty good stuff, and it's a different way to practice. Essentially, it's good brain exercise. I was just about to read something, and then it scrolled out of view. All right. Let's go back to so Sammy Lauren H says, this is a room. I assumed the sword wall was just on its own in the middle of the field. No, this is a room. This is my office or study. So this is where I spend a large percentage of my life these days, now that I work entirely from home pretty much. Greetings from Portugal, from Oklahoma, from Belgium, Poland, Argentina, Florida, wow, all over. So I'm really surprised actually by how many Americans are tuning in at this time, because normally obviously when I do a live stream I do it much later in the day, when more Americans would be awake or at least not working or whatever. But anyway, no, it's great to see so many of you here. France, South Africa, Missouri. So yeah, no, great. Right, I'll stop reading out places. You know I always do this, but so this is any thoughts on a video on the development process. Sorry, this is from James Morgan. The development process for military sabers, like how decisions were made regarding the design of the guard and blade and stuff. So yeah, I mean, that is a super technical subject for a video, and that is something that I maybe could do in the future. It would require a bit of preparation, I think, because obviously I don't hold all facts and figures in my head, not all of them anyway. But Brian Robson's book, Swords of the British Army, has a lot of that material in. Equally, the development of the US pattern saber, the model 1913 I think it is very interesting because it wasn't Patton's design fully. It seems what happened is that basically the hilt and the scabbard were basically already designed by a committee, and then he came in and went, we don't like that blade, you should use this blade. It was basically modelled on the Swedish model 1893 from 20 years earlier. Yeah, it was sort of, it wasn't Patton's sword, and it's not a sabre, but it wasn't Patton's sabre, it was more of a committee design. So yeah, there's lots of individual examples of specific models of sword, which, but I could talk in more general terms, I suppose, about how generally military swords were designed, although it wasn't always the same in all countries. In Britain and America, I know there were committees. In France, I think it was done a little bit more internally. I think they had a board of ordnance, and probably no one outside of that was necessarily involved. In Italy, completely different. Well, not completely different to England, actually, Britain. But in Italy, it was done sort of in conjunction between fencing masters and the war department, as it were. So they actually got, for example, Del Frate, the fencing master, they got him involved in the design of the hilt in the 1870s of the new cavalry sword. So fencing masters were actually consulted in Italy, and that was to some extent the case in Britain. Ironically, in 1895, by consulting the Italian fencing master Ferdinand Masiello, but before that, also consulting people like Alfred Hutton and people like that. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing. There's an article, incidentally, on the Easton Antique Arms website. I have a resources section where I put some essays by me and other stuff, research material. And there's an essay on there on British swords of the 1890s where you get some of that insight into that there. But very good question. But yeah, maybe it is... yeah, so Joe Van Aert is going to highlight my complete kind of technical ineptitude. Is the mic a condenser mic? If they require 48 volt power and without it they can be very quiet. Well, that could be it. It's a USB, it's one that plugs in USB and it's got no other power source. So this is the mic, it's tonal, and probably if I talk like this you can hear me a lot more clearly, and if the mic was closer to me then I could probably turn down the percentage, but I don't really want to sit here with a microphone right in front of my face the whole time. But yeah, probably a better microphone is in order. My experience with buying equipment is you rarely save money by buying a cheaper thing, unfortunately. Sometimes you just have to accept you've got to spend more money for a better product. So, oh wow, someone calling in from Wakanda. Hello from Wakanda. Hi, Wakanda. Someone I'd like to visit one day. Hello from a Dutch saber collector. Hi, how you doing? South Africa again. More Texas. There's loads of people in Texas. Peru, well, awesome. I'm classing Peru as the most kind of exotic location so far that's messaged on here. Dorset. I'm actually going to Dorset in a couple of months, lockdown rules permitting. But yeah, Dorset, one of my favourite places, which I might move to one day if I don't move to Texas. So Daniel Taylor asks, how's the family doing? The family's doing really well, thanks. Both the kids are in learning institutions today, hence I'm by myself in my study and getting some time to actually do some work for a change. Lucy's doing well, she's working hard in her office. So thanks for asking. I hope you're all doing well with your current conditions. Obviously different countries are in different pandemic lockdowns and different states of disaster at the moment, but I hope that you and your family are keeping safe. Turkey, Texas, Canada, New York. Brilliant. Okay, right, I'll stop reading places again. Right. The hum is overwhelming. I'm not sure it's worth watching this guy. Okay, I'm really sorry about that, Will. But if it's troubling you, by all means, do sign off, because the live stream's probably not worth that level of anguish. So obviously, I'll fiddle around with the microphone and try and get it. Okay, the sound quality is good by my face, but I imagine you'll still get the buzzing. Right, nothing I can do about that. So, do you know of any HEMA in Lancashire? Lancashire, I'm not sure. I always say the best thing that people can do is go to the UK HEMA page and just ask there, okay? Because if you say what your location is, your nearest town or city, and say you're looking for a HEMA club, then you'll get loads of suggestions of where you could get to. Florida, another place I might immigrate to. Thomas in Florida, hi there. Quebec, yeah, loads of other places. Oh, I've got a couple of super chats come in which I should address. So Sambus90 says, hi from Australia. Do you know much about the design purpose of Nepalese Kora swords? They seem utterly bizarre. Well, kind of, I do actually, yeah, without sort of blowing my own trumpet. So I haven't made a huge study of Nepalese weapons, but as you know, I have studied the kukri to some degree and do have a modest collection of antique kukris. And the Kora is very clearly related to a number of other Indian swords, and bear in mind, of course, Nepal's just above India, that go all the way back to what would be equivalent of the kind of classical era in Europe. And it's very clear that if we go back into the equivalent of the early medieval period, that the predominant types of sword in India, in the Indian subcontinent, were either straight or forwards curved. And it's clear to me anyway, it seems fairly likely that the Nepalese Kora shares a similar origin with a number of forwards curved swords that we find in Indian art from the early medieval period and right the way through into the Middle Ages. And so a lot of people think of, when they think of Indian swords, they just think of the tulwar or maybe the kanda. Well, actually the kanda is a much older sword, and the kanda goes all the way back into 1500 years back, and has its origins in a straight sword with a crossguard essentially, and then it got a developed hilt later on, much like European swords. But at the same time as that, there were forwards curved blades, and I think these have got to be related to the Nepalese Kora. So in terms of the purpose, I mean, it just makes for a more effective chopper. So any forwards curved blade like a bill, or a kukri, or any other blade which curves forward, makes for a more, the point of impact, the edge that you're impacting with, is forwards of the line of leverage. So it's like an axe basically, so it hacks more and makes for very, very deep chops, deep cuts. So there you go, I hope that kind of answers the question, and thanks for your super chat. Next super chat I've got here is Empire 2.0. It says, hi Matt, have you thought about having a sabre made for your own design, a matte pattern if you will? Yeah, I have, quite a lot actually, and that's probably a topic for a video, but I do have personal preferences for grip shape, grip construction, grip material, guard design, and blade types as well. And I have to be honest, I don't have only one favourite blade type. There's actually a few different blade types that I think are really, really cool. It would be quite difficult if I was just getting one sword made. I'd have to do that. I'd have to subject myself to some context. Basically, I'd have to go, okay, what's this sword for? What type of, is it for one-on-one dueling? Is it for campaigning? If it's for campaigning, military campaigning, obviously imaginary, then is it for what type of environment, what type of opponents, this kind of stuff. So I would choose a different type of blade dependent on those different conditions. But I've designed a practice sabre, so-called gymnasium sabre, with Caveton, the Caveton Easton Mark III, which is available from Caveton and sometimes from me when I've got them in stock. And
That's a great practice sword. I'm actually looking at, with Kveton, doing another sword with them, which is kind of like even more personal to me, kind of like an ultimate version. So yeah, the basic answer is yes. Jakub, I think you might be, yes, you're in Poland. Thank you for your super chat contribution. You haven't asked a question. If you want to ask a question, you're very welcome to. But thanks for that. Right, I'm just going to pop over to the other questions. There's a comment here about Right Said Fred. Yes, it often gets commented on that in certain photos I can look like I'm from the band Right Said Fred. Thanks for that. They're a bit more buff than I am, though, in fairness. Idaho calling in, South America. Where in South America, though, Barbara? Could be anywhere. South America's a big place. And, any chance... Oh, so Jakub has actually asked a question in the main chat. Any chance you could do a movie fight review for The Three Musketeers, 1973, with Michael York, the monastery fight? Hell yeah, I can do that. So my only problem with doing the movie fight reviews, which I love doing them, and you know that I used to do them more often, is that the bots on YouTube have become even more limiting in what they'll allow you to upload without your video getting not only demonetized, which is not a big problem, frankly, because it doesn't matter if one video doesn't make any money. As long as it gets views, still gets entertainment and brings people to the channel and stuff like that. The main problem is that YouTube will now not even promote a video that you make. So you could put hours of effort into a movie fight review and basically almost no one will see it, which is really frustrating and demoralising. But there are ways around that, and it seems to be based on the movie rights and who owns the rights. Some companies don't seem to mind you sharing their stuff, and other companies won't let you share it at all. As I've spoken about before, it's why I haven't done more stuff to do with Black Sails. So Black Sails is owned by Stars, and Stars don't allow you to use anything online, even if it's explicitly a review and just a little clip, and they're really vehement about that, whereas other companies seem quite liberal about using their stuff. So anyway, to get back to the question, yes, I will. I love those movies, absolutely love those. It's a trilogy, isn't it? Yeah, it is a trilogy. And I love those films. I love the fights in them. They were choreographed by a guy called Bill Hobbs, who I had the honour to meet actually about 10 years ago at the Royal Armouries. Fascinating guy. So yes, I definitely will. Very good stuff. Free State Fellow has said, hello from the northern US. Are there any good period sources to apply to the use of the Scivona? So surprisingly, this is a question which comes up not infrequently, actually, because the Scivona is a really good looking sword. There's actually quite a lot of them surviving, so if you're in the antique collecting world, if you want to buy a Scivona and you've got maybe about £1,500 spare, maybe even as little as 1,000 depending on the condition, but 1,500, you can get an actual 17th century or 18th century Scivona. So they're popular swords, they've got great hand protection, they look great, they're popular to get replicated for HEMA, but there are no real fencing sources for them. But what I would say is they're Venetian swords, yeah? So they were popular particularly in Venice and other parts of Italy, but particularly areas in the Venetian sphere. And I would say that if you really want to work out what are the best systems to use with a Scivona, look at Italian systems that are of the later 16th century. So look at the late side sword material, Dalagocchi, Vigiani, all this kind of stuff. And then also you want to look a little bit at some of the rapier material, because remember, just because it's a basket hilted broadsword, it can still be used in a similar way to some of the rapier treatises are actually using what we more typically think of as a rapier, but you can use side swords, you can use broadswords in that manner. So rapier is more, certainly in Italy at that time, is more like a philosophy and a method rather than necessarily restricted to one particular type of sword. And some of these so-called rapier treatises, for example, Francesco Alfieri from 1640-ish, has a load of cutting in it. So you can quite happily mix the late side sword material, some of the Italian rapier treatises, and the cutting repertoire they've got in there with a Scivona. If you want to mix it with British backsword and broadsword material as well, you can do. There's no reason why you couldn't use a Scivona to do Joseph Swetnam or Zachary Wilde or whatever. They are contemporary, but they are from a different culture. There is a little bit of evidence that Schiavonas were sometimes traded and used in Britain, but more or less they're an Italian sword, so I kind of think you should look at Italian systems, but you don't have to, it's your choice. I hope that's helpful. So Will says, I can't take the buzzing anymore. I'm really sorry, Will. But there we go. That's life. So other people are saying the hum isn't too bad for them. Joshua says, it says, just to say, great job and can't wait for more Falx videos. Thanks for your super chat. And yeah, the Falx videos are coming. In fact, they're quite high up on my to-do list, because if you guys remember, that this channel was actually sponsored by Metatron channel with a Roman helmet. So Raffaello actually bought a Roman helmet and had it sent to me, and I'm going to destroy it. Now, initially that was for testing against Pila. I was going to say Pilums, but Pila. And I am going to do that, but I feel 95% certain that the Pila aren't going to do too much to the helmet, or at least they will leave it in such a shape that I can still use it for another video, and that will be used for the Falx video. And I suspect that more people are interested to see what a Falx does to a Roman style helmet than the Pilum does. But anyway, we can do both. Maybe I'll do them both in the same video, maybe, I think probably separate videos. So some people are saying that there is less buzz. Oh, the buzz goes away when the mic's closer to me. Okay, well that's interesting. So I'll just keep the mic closer to me. I guess what I'll do is I'll move my keyboard. There we go, then I don't have to hold it. Is that a bit better? If I move closer to the mic now, then maybe you'll get less of the background noise. I suspect that the buzz that you're hearing is just simply the plumbing and other kind of, noise around me that you get in the background that you don't notice when you're there, but you do when you've got headphones on or whatever. Right. Oh, is it because oh, that's really interesting. Reek of Death from Denmark, sorry about your name, has said perhaps the buzzing's because the mic was too close to your speakers. Well, do you know what? The mic was close to my router and my speaker, and now it's not close to anything in particular. So maybe that's the problem. So maybe it's other devices. Now I'm too loud. Maybe I'll talk more quietly. Is that better? Right, okay. The sound's way better now. Well, that's brilliant. Come on there. Right, so I'm just going to have a quick look for any other questions that... Richard Delotto says, why not put a Scholar logo on the microphone, just like in old times radio? That's a good idea. And coming in from, sorry, we've got... yeah, maybe I need a proper retro old microphone to hold and speak into really, really close. Okay. So it does seem maybe the buzzing is actually from the speakers. I know that the speakers, when my mouse gets too close to my speakers, sometimes it makes the speakers buzz. So, yeah, so various people are pointing this out now that I'm actually bothering to read. I should have read you earlier, shouldn't I? Oh, right, so I've had Jombly Wobbly, that's a hell of a name. I'm sorry, I don't know where you are from the currency, but super chat question, how familiar are you with video game weapons and fighting styles? Any review plans in the future? Well, I'll tell you what, I'll be honest with you guys. Yes, but not a lot of video games. So I don't get a lot of time to play many video games these days, but I spend a lot of time playing one particular video game, and that is Bannerlord. I'm afraid I spend quite a lot of my time playing Bannerlord. So I am going to start doing some Bannerlord videos, and I've actually been experimenting with recording the footage and stuff, so yeah, that is in the works. My only slight hesitancy is that Bannerlord has been an absolute freaking nightmare with their updates, particularly since Christmas. So literally on Christmas Day they brought out an update which almost broke the game, and then they spent like the next week but trying to unbreak it. So it seems like every time they bring out a new update for Bannerlord that it makes it a bit worse. So I'm a little bit reluctant to do Bannerlord videos while it's so buggy. And the big one, there are two big ones at the moment. One is the Sound of Doom, as it's being called, which is sometimes when you're playing, especially if you've got headphones in, some people have said they've actually been temporarily deafened by this, which I shouldn't laugh about, but where this horrendous noise suddenly comes through the speakers. I just turn the speakers down, but if people are wearing headphones, it's a bit more concerning. And the other thing is, when you respawn, if you're the commander of a unit, for example, in the captain mode, and you get killed, you get to respawn as one of your men. And when you do that, for some really annoying reason, there's a slow walking bug, which means that sometimes when you respawn, it's like you're walking through water, and you can't walk at normal speed. You can't run. I mean, you can't even run really in the game at all, but you can't even just walk at normal speed. You walk really, really slowly, which means it's just impossible to get your men to the right place, or lead your men anyway, or to really defend yourself. If you get attacked, you just got to stand there and fight, but you can't really move around quick enough. Anyway, Bannerlord videos will come at some point. You may have just heard the cat screaming in the background there because it's getting close to his tea time. Right, I'm only going to be able to do a couple more questions now because I've got some more jobs to do. But do I know of any historic gunfighting manuals? So this is from DM Andy. Do you know of any historic gunfighting manuals, or are the vast majority focused on bayonet and don't mention the firing part much? Basically, yes. So we do get shooting manuals from about the middle of the 19th century onwards. Most people in HEMA tend not to study them because, certainly in Europe, most European HEMA people just are interested in swords and don't really shoot guns. I do shoot guns, so I am interested in that stuff. We get a lot more around the First World War, well, kind of the Boer War, First World War, so beginning of the 1900s. You get a lot more sort of musketry manuals then, and it's mostly to do with calculating trajectory and stuff like this, and sometimes they are manuals literally in a particular rifle, so how to use the SMLE or the Longley rifle or whatever more effectively, and how to maintain it and stuff like this. But in terms of sort of gunfighting, in terms of kind of like the Wild West version of gunfighting, or indeed pistol dueling, no, I don't know of any off the top of my head. Obviously we've got archery manuals, and some of the earliest weapon manuals we have are actually bow and arrow archery manuals, going in Persia, in Turkey, Mamluk, going all the way back into about the 13th century. I think the earliest one's something crazy like the 12th century or something, but from the 13th and 14th century you start to get archery manuals. But in terms of shooting manuals, no, basically there isn't an awful lot. There's quite a lot of drill manuals which teach you loading and firing as actions for how to drill the recruits basically, and how to hold their musket, how to march with their musket, how to load their musket, how to fire the musket. But in terms of actually accuracy or how to shoot at moving targets or anything like this, nothing really until we get into the beginning of the 20th century. And when we start to get into the kind of 1920s and 30s, then we start to get manuals that are more combatives manuals that teach self-defense for police and for military using the handgun. We start to get things like the famous kind of World War II combatives commando manuals, and people like Fairbairn Sykes and stuff like this. I've got an original manual of shoot to kill or shoot to live. Is it shoot to live? Anyway, I've got a copy of that somewhere. So when we get into the more of the middle of the 20th century, then you do start to get manuals more studying the use of firearms in that sense, but not so much before that, I'm afraid. I've had a couple of questions come in while I've been yabbering away. So PLP says, hello, I've got a French Navy officer's sabre, 1957, from my grandpa, and I'd love to learn an appropriate sabre system for it. What sources do you suggest? Do you mean 1957? Excuse me. So there's a French naval officer's sabre of 1837. Maybe it's that one. I'm not really sure. So that kind of depends. The answer depends on that partly. But I mean, I'm not very au fait on the French sources. So what I would recommend you to do is, if you go onto Facebook, there is a really good group called Military and Classical Sabre on Facebook. And when you've joined that, you could ask the same question there, and there are a number of people on there who specialise in French sabre fencing, military sabre fencing, and will be able to give you some answers. But I'm afraid off the top of my head I don't know. The only thing I could say is that there was a main official system which was taught at the French military academy. That's its name I can't remember off the top of my head now. What's the name of the Joinville? So the Joinville Military Academy. Now that's army rather than navy, but I think that their sabre system was probably the same. I might be wrong. So anyway, there we go. That's one lead. The Joinville sabre system might be something to look at, but there are other French sabre manuals out there. We've also, if you just look on Google Books for, if you search for the relevant terms, for example, sabre, escrime de sabre, and things like this, then you will find relevant things, I think. Hope that helps. So Wing083, thanks for your super chat, says, "Hi Matt, thoughts on sharpening swords with sandpaper, particularly resharpening antique sabres which were originally servo sharpened?" Yep, it can be done. I have talked about this in videos in the past. Sandpaper, I mean, I always say the DC ceramic stone is the best thing that I've ever had for sharpening, belt sanders aside, but you can use wet and dry sandpaper. So you want a fine sandpaper that's intended for metal, so wet and dry sandpaper, and put it on a wooden block. You can glue it on, you can wrap it around, but you want it on a hard, flat surface. So you're essentially creating your own budget whetstone. And yeah, absolutely you can do that. Just try and stick to the same bevel. So take it really slow, treat the edge in small sections. Don't try and do long sweeps like you see people sharpening things on the internet. Just do it in small sections, working on the same bevel. So what you're essentially doing is cleaning and polishing that bevel that's already there, so that where the two edges, planes rather, meet, becomes thinner and thinner and finer, and you'll end up with a good sharp, should be shaving sharp edge. But yeah, wet and dry sandpaper on a block of wood absolutely can do the job. And also Wing083 asks, also, what's the most common edge, convex, single, secondary bevel that you find on sabres that were sharpened for campaign? So you get all different types of sharpening on period swords. Single bevel edges are rare, but they do exist. But to get a single bevel edge, you have to take the entire planes of the blade down, which means damaging an antique, which is, generally speaking, a big no-no. I do have antique swords that were brought down, the etching was, ground off, they brought the whole blade down to a single bevel. And so they did do that in period sometimes. But if that was done in period, that's one thing. Doing it now, personally, I'd say is a big no-no. Most antique sabres have a secondary bevel, and it's a straight secondary bevel. So you've got the blade comes up here, and then they apply a secondary bevel near the edge, and usually that meets at about 40 degrees. So the angle between, actually at the cutting edge, is about 40 degrees, sometimes less than that, sometimes more than that, has to be said. Sometimes it's as much as about, it's sometimes more like, quite a lot, I would say, probably something like, what have we got? So there's 90, it's probably something as much as 70 degrees sometimes, but I would say sticking nearer 40-45 degrees is usually authentic. But if your sword is already servo sharpened, just try and match what was done originally, and it will still be sharp enough to cut stuff if that's what you want to do, and it will be true to the original as well without changing it. Hope that's helpful. Right, I'm going to have to start wrapping up now, but thank you so much for coming and throwing all these questions at me. I actually, so we've got 230 people online at the moment, which is way more than I thought. There was going to be like 20 or 30 of us, so that's absolutely fantastic. Will is still talking about the sound.
So guys, don't argue about the sound. The sound is the sound, and it's never going to change. Not for this video anyway. I'll see if I can get it better for a future video, but if I can't, I can't, and that's life. So, wow, there's loads of discussion going on in the chat that I was completely oblivious to, and obviously I can't. Okay. Good. Oh, DM Andy's happy with my answer. Well, I'm happy that you're happy with my answer. There's people talking about warbows here as well. Yeah, warbow's a good thing. Yeah, British muzzleloaders. Do you know what? So I watch British muzzleloaders, and we're friends on Facebook, and we talk a bit, and we talk about doing a bit more collaboration in the future. It's a great channel. Doesn't come highly recommended enough. If you're interested in 19th century firearms with a particular slant to British military firearms, then British Muzzleloaders channel is absolutely fantastic. Even if you're just interested in British military history, it's very useful. I'm also a fan of Hickok 45 and also Mike Bellevue as well. But, you know, both producing really good content, and I shoot black powder. I shoot black powder firearms, and I shoot slightly more modern firearms as well, 303. And so I have, as you know, I have an interest in historical firearms, but I am not an authority at all. So I very much learn from those guys. Right, okay, there we go. So Cat Easton is being called for again. He's probably being fed now, so I don't know where he is. But thanks so much for joining me. Senatus Populus Romanus says, when are you going to get an Imperial Roman harness like Metatron? Don't tempt me. Trust me, I have thought about it. Yeah. I have thought about it, but I've got so many things on my want list. I think I've got to stay a little bit focused with my 15th century armour. Needs to get sorted first, and then maybe I'll think about other periods. Right, okay. Yeah, Forgotten Weapons, of course, in range. All channels I watch. You guys can probably see which channels I'm subscribed to actually, but yeah, I watch Cap and Ball. I love Cap and Ball, and one day I hope that I might be able to get out to Hungary and do some shooting with him. It's got a really cool setup, and I really like his attitude. And he had a Beaumont Adams. He's one of the few people I've seen actually shoot a Beaumont Adams on YouTube, which at some point I will do because I have Beaumont Adams and I shoot. I shoot black powder revolvers, but yeah. Right, okay. I'm going to sign off there. There's a lot of chitter chatter. Gun Jesus, yeah. There's a lot of chitter chatter on the chat, and I'm having trouble filtering through it all now. But there we go. Thanks so much for joining me. Thanks so much for the questions. I will see you really soon again, and as promised, we will do a scheduled, with a few days' notice at least, where Lucy will join me as well. Very useful to know that this mic is just about bearable if I've got it in the middle of my desk and away from my speakers. If you could continue giving me any feedback actually in the comments about the microphone, that would be really useful. Joe Lesh says, I hate Cap and Ball, he got me hooked on black powder shooting and cost me lots of dollars. So cool. Okay, right, I'm going to sign off now. Thanks guys for joining me, and I will see you again soon. Cheers folks. Bye.